Up the guns. I'm Ben Wittenstein. He's Nate Jacobson. Nate, we are back after a week off, feeling nice, feeling rested. You're feeling quite literally jacked up. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
We're excited. We got college football playoff games upon us.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how these playoff games play out. We're thinking about this all season and how the season would end with 12 teams now making the playoffs, giving a lot more teams a chance to win the national title. I feel like there's 6 legitimate title threats this year, which is really cool. And in past years, I think even with a 12-team playoff, there'll still only be like 2 to 4 teams. So it's a lot of fun I think we're going to have over the next month. And I'm especially excited for these upcoming games, the 4 games, the 1 on Friday night, and then the 3 on Saturday in a triple header, because they're on campus. They're at home stadiums. I think it's going to be really cool to see those atmospheres, because when you think of college football playoff games, you think of like neutral site games in NFL stadiums. And sometimes it's a good crowd. Usually it's like a split crowd, but it's a little bit different. I feel like where there's going to be 4 teams with like legitimate home field advantages. And it's going to be a really cool scene, especially those stadiums where it's big programs and in Notre Dame and Penn State and Texas and Ohio State. So I think that's going to be really cool to see. So really looking forward to seeing how this weekend plays out, not just from like a betting standpoint, but just a overall watching experience.
Yeah, there has been a lot of weird and bad decisions in college football over the years, but having these teams host the first round of the college football playoffs has been a phenomenal decision, because I'm really excited to see what these environments are like. And we don't really know betting wise any of the trends for something like this. We are heading into this blind. Like, we don't know if teams hosting first round of the college football playoffs, if they cover a lot of the time, if they don't cover, if the total hits the over. So we are completely flying into this blind, which is scary, but also kind of fun.
Right. Like, how much extra home field advantage do some of these teams deserve, or you should factor into the point spread, because it is a playoff game as opposed to a regular season game. I think that's definitely something to consider, and something that we can learn from for future years, or maybe it's just a short sample size and we'll be left guessing after this weekend.
All right, so let's just get into it. We're going to go backwards in the Sounders from the Fade 5. We usually start at number 5, but this is a special occasion, so we have to start with number 1 for the first game of the college football playoff in this new format.
Number 1.
Nate, we go to South Bend, Indiana. Indiana at Notre Dame on Friday night kicks this all off. Notre Dame laying the 7 at home. 51.5 is the total. My alma mater, the Indiana Hoosiers, can they take the world by surprise? What do you like in this one?
Well, I kind of want you to go first, because I feel like we've been doing shows the last, this is our 4th, I think, football season doing shows together. And we've talked a good amount about Indiana football over that time. And I feel like I've always kind of made fun of you, because Indiana is like a 4 or 5 win team, even though you had some optimistic viewpoints for them. But now they're in the college football playoff. It's incredible. I mean, like, what's your kind of just like general thoughts on the Hoosiers? Your Hoosiers, a football program that, even though it's a basketball school, that you always were banging the table for. So I want to give you first word for the big game Friday night against an in-state rival, I guess, or in-state opponent in Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's the battle for the Hoosier State supremacy. But I keep telling people about this IU team that it almost seems like a dream this season. It doesn't really even feel real. And the last time we felt something almost like close to this was during COVID, and the COVID year when IU beat Penn State. That was the Michael Penix Jr. year. He reached out across the goal line for the touchdown that may or may not have been in the end zone for a touchdown on that one. And that's what kind of kick-started the Tom Allen era, and everybody love each other, and Indiana just steamrolling a lot of those teams in the COVID years when all these other teams had people opt out due to COVID issues. So it's nice to see Indiana football actually thrive and succeed in a more normal circumstances where teams don't have opt-outs and where they actually win double-digit games and they actually look like a real team and the advanced stats back it up. So to me, this has almost felt like a dream where I never even imagined Indiana football would be in a position like this, where they're now going to make an appearance on 3 College Game Day episodes, which is amazing. College Game Day has followed them 3 different times. They have a quarterback who is close in the Heisman Trophy voting. They have a defense that's one of the best in the country. So it's it blows my mind that Indiana football can be in this position so soon, so quickly. First year under head coach Curt Cignetti, and honestly, if they just get their butts whooped in this game, it was a successful season. Because I don't think no one, their grandmothers, their parents, uncles, aunts could have imagined Indiana being in this position this year this quickly. So this has already been a season on a win. They're playing with house money. But when it comes to this game, I'm a little nervous because I have been on the side of really liking Notre Dame a lot this season. I think they just play teams really well. I think their line really wears down teams and they just end up running all over them in the second half. I bet a couple of Notre Dame team total overs because they just score once that second half hits and their opponent is just run down. So I am a little bit worried about that. This is going to be the best team Notre Dame has seen in a while, best defense they've seen in a while by far. I am staying away from a full game spread. I think 7.5 sounds about right. I know you have something on the total, but I picked and chose one little spot for Indiana that have been really good this season, and that's the first quarter. I'm going to go to the first quarter +3, and I think you can get +3.5 at some spots now if you want to lay like -122. But the first quarter is really where Indiana has thrived this season. Curt Cignetti, for how good he has been, he gets his teams ready right out of the gate, and they start out really hot. They are one of the top 10 teams in scoring in the first quarter of the season. They have one of the best defenses in the country. I think they're number 2 in first quarter scoring defense this season. They are really good at just starting out hot, and we saw it in a comparable game against Ohio State on the road at the Shoe. They led 7-0 after that first quarter in a tough environment, toughest game of the season. They got a hot start, and I think we'll probably see something similar from Indiana in this game. They've already been tested in a tough road environment, going to Ohio State and facing high expectations and a lot of pressure. So this isn't going to be super new situationally. I think they're good enough to keep it close with Notre Dame for a quarter, maybe even a half, but I'm going to keep it a quarter. They're getting 3 points. I think we maybe even just see like a 0-0 tie, 7-7 kind of thing at the end of the first quarter. They keep it close. They'll keep the margins. Notre Dame is a pretty average first quarter team. Indiana starts out hot. I like the Hoosiers +3 first quarter in this one.
Yeah, very well said. I'm going with the under here, 51.5. It actually got bet up a little bit today where the 50.5s and 51s became 51.5 and even 52. We'll use 51.5 because that's what I wrote up in the article on thegamingjuice.com, which you can check out. Ben and I did a joint article for that one because it's a big game on Friday night. I just believe it'll be a little bit difficult for Indiana to score here. I know they've had a good season, but they also haven't played the best opponents. And when they had a step up in class against solid defenses, namely Michigan and Ohio State, their offense did sputter a little bit. And I guess you could say Notre Dame hasn't faced the best offenses, especially passing offenses throughout the season, other than the Louisville game and then USC, which I actually thought had a lot of success in that game. They just threw a couple pick six at the end to make the scoreboard look worse than what the gameplay was. I do see a struggle for Indiana's offense here. At the same time, I think Indiana's defense can play well. I thought they were pretty good stopping Ohio State in that one loss, especially when you look back at how Ohio State scored. The Indiana punter dropped a snap. It led to a short touchdown for Ohio State. Then Ohio State had a punt return for a touchdown. And then at the end, there was that awkward play where I think Ohio State was trying to run up the score. Like Will Howard just kind of like dove into the end zone when he could have kneeled. And then Ohio State has 38. But really, I think if you take out some of those fluky plays, it was actually a good performance from Indiana, and I think they could show out well here. I think they're going to want to shorten the game, run the ball. Notre Dame's going to want to do the same. It's going to be a chilly night in South Bend. So I do like the under for several reasons, just thinking that Indiana's defense maybe a little bit better than we think, and also Notre Dame having a strong defense that can give Indiana's offense that has struggled a bit when they've had to play elite competition in the 2 games that they really had to do so. So like the under here, plus add in the chilly weather where I don't think there is going to be much of a passing game from either side.
Don't forget, one of my worst beats of the season this year was the Ohio State team total under 32.5 in their game against Indiana, because Ryan Day just wanted to lay it on the points, and they had the ball inside the 5, 50 seconds to go. They could have just knelt it, gone home with a big win still. It would have been 31-15. They decided to go and go in the end zone. It was 38-15, and they got the team total over. So realistically, this Indiana defense really only gave up less than 30 points in that Ohio State game, because one of them was off the bad punt, the mishap in the punt, and the other one was just a garbage time touchdown that didn't need to happen. So I think punt return, right. And then I think the under is a really strong play here. And I'm a little surprised it's still over 50, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it got bet up today, so if you want to wait out, maybe this continues to trickle up, especially if the weather doesn't look as bad. I mean, it's going to be cold. It's not going to be extremely windy, so maybe that's why it's going up. But it's one of those things where I feel like you don't have to get in on the under now based on the Wednesday line move as we talk about these games on a Wednesday late afternoon into the early evening.
All right, let's stay in Big Ten country for our second play of the weekend.
Number 2.
We go to Happy Valley, SMU at Penn State, -8.5, 54 is the total. This is, I think, a game we both were kind of like, the numbers seem right. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no clue what to do here. I think SMU as a team, great season, 11-1, 11-2, I guess, because they lost in the AC title game. Didn't get punished for that. Still made the playoffs as an at-large. But they had a very favorable ACC draw. They deserve a lot of credit for coming back and tying the game against Clemson before losing on that last second, 56-yard field goal by Clemson, but also concerning that they got down in that game and kind of maybe a little bit nerves kicked in, but Clemson kind of got out early against them. And Penn State, I think they're a good team, but it's like a team that I don't think is as good as maybe the market has them rated and kind of where their ranking is. But at the same time, they have a really good path in this college football playoff. If you look big picture for Penn State, where you win this game at home, you play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve, and then you're on the other side of the bracket where you avoid a Texas and Ohio State and Oregon until the title game. And it could be Georgia in the semifinal without Carson Beck. It could be Notre Dame, who's going to probably be pretty beat up if they get to that point, because they'd have to beat Indiana and Georgia. So in terms of path, Penn State really benefited from losing the Big Ten title game. I feel like them losing the Big Ten title game actually gives them a better chance than if they were a 1 or 2 seed and had a bye, which is pretty crazy to think about, and maybe kind of shows the flaws in the current college football playoff system that I think can easily be fixed over the years, where we don't have conference champions as the only teams that get byes. It's just the best 4 teams get a bye, but that's a story for a different time. So I in terms of this game, I don't know what to do. I think a lot of people might make the argument, bet against Penn State and James Franklin in a big game, but in those past big games, they were against, elite Michigan teams, really good elite Ohio State teams, like the one we saw this year. So I feel like in a game where they're a big favorite, they could take care of business here, and this isn't like a game that Franklin in the past has slipped up in.
It's interesting because I think for a game like this, to me, it comes down to a very simple thing, which is Penn State wins and covers against bad teams. And against better teams, they seem to sometimes struggle, at least this season. Yeah. And that USC game comes to mind. Now, that was on the road, but Penn State won. They didn't cover the 3.5-point spread. But it's really, how do you view SMU? Do you think SMU is a very good team, a good to great team this season? Or do you just kind of see them as maybe getting lucky in a relatively easy conference or winning lucky games, things like that? And, you saw at the end of the ACC championship against Clemson, maybe that they're just not built for bigger games against really good programs. So it really comes down to how you view SMU. Again, this is the thing. I think SMU is a good team. I've bet on them to cover double-digit spreads, and they have covered in those instances against bad teams, so they get things done. But on the road, against a Big Ten team who we've seen the conference is very good this season, they have some very tough teams. That it's tough to not take double-digit points in this scenario. 8.5, 9. I know SMU's defense is good, but is that going to travel to a tough road environment with a high stakes game?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Definitely one to watch, and maybe there's an opportunity to bet on or against Penn State down the line if they are the team to advance. If I guess I had to pick some bet in this game, maybe the over at 54. I know 55 is a key number in terms of college football total betting. But again, it's going to be a chilly day, a noon start. I'm not exactly sure if SMU is going to do their part in terms of scoring, because I do respect Penn State's defense that's coordinated by Tom Allen. So another Indiana connection for this weekend, along with Michael Penix getting a start, the former Hoosier quarterback who then went to Washington. So a big day big weekend for Indiana football and some former people who were part of the programs there.
The only thing the bet that I would honestly maybe like for a game like this would be first half and go SMU's side. Maybe,
Okay.
they had a really, really bad start to their first half in the ACC championship game. Because it's such an early start, that favors them. They don't have to deal with Happy Valley at night. They're going to be ready. They're going to be ready to go and probably have some pretty good planned out plays for Penn State. Penn State plays it easy, run the ball. They just try to wear SMU down. Second half comes around and Penn State's talent kind of takes over. So maybe we see something like that. So if I have to pick anything in this game, I would probably go SMU first half, take the points. I think it's at like 4, something like that in that area.
I'd expect SMU to be a little looser in this game because in the AC title game, they were the favorite. It was a small favorite, but they also felt the pressure of probably feeling like they needed to win the game to make the playoff, which was a very possibility, but they lost a close game, still made the playoff. So now it's kind of like a house money situation, which I know is kind of maybe a lazy cliche with handicapping, but I also maybe they're just a little bit looser and have a little bit of a different mentality, which could help them, especially early in the game if you're just looking about the first 30 minutes.
All right, let's go to the third game of the weekend.
Number 3.
Ooh, boy, this was going to be exciting. Clemson at Texas. It's a double-digit spread, Nate. However, I think a lot of people think this game might be closer than expected. We have a Clemson team kind of on the up and up against the Texas team plateauing.
Yeah, so I like Clemson here plus the points. I wrote that up on Monday and it was published Tuesday early in the day. Clemson plus 12, the official play here. And I actually think a lot of people like Texas, or at least they like Texas at the early numbers of minus 10, 10.5, even minus 11 as more sports books have gone to 12. And now the question is, do you think it'll get to 13? I don't. So I took the plus 12 today, a little bit of a smaller bet. I'm leaving some room for maybe a bigger bet or put more money on Clemson if that number goes up to like 13. Or maybe I'll go Clemson first half if I can find a plus 7. So just something I'm keeping in mind where I'm leaving some money in my account to wait and see if I can get bet another Clemson in another form or at a better number closer to game day. But I think my bet here is more of a fade against Texas, a team I'm still not entirely sold on. I thought they had a really fortunate draw in terms of their schedule. If you look at who they played in the SEC, their 8 regular season games, 6 of them were against the 7 teams that had a 500 or worse record in league play. Their other 2 regular season games in conference play were against Georgia, where they lost 30-15 at home. And then they beat Texas A&M late in the season, or last game of the season, that rivalry game, to get them into the SEC championship game. It was a pretty ugly game, 17-7. And also Texas A&M, a team that was led by Marcel Reed, who probably not as good as the record because of the schedule they played. So it was kind of like 2 teams that I probably would have wanted to bet against. I was actually on A&M that day and definitely didn't deserve to cover, but A&M did have some chances at the end to at least get within the number, catching 7. But then Texas has this big opportunity. You can win the SEC, first year in the league, avenge the loss to Georgia at Atlanta. You're up 6-3 at halftime. Carson Beck's out for the game with the elbow injury. Gunnar Stockton comes in, a backup quarterback with very little experience for Georgia, and he comes in, leads a comeback victory. It wasn't the prettiest performance of Stockton, but they moved the ball right away on the first drive against Texas defense, and then Texas offense, just that whole game just bogged down as soon as they got within the 40-yard line into Georgia territory or in the red zone. And I feel like that's a pretty big concern for Texas, because I know when it comes to red zone success, there's a lot of randomness in it, but we've seen Texas the last 2 years, just the red zone offense has not been effective. And I'm also worried about Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. A few things going on here. You have Arch Manning kind of waiting in the wings, and I feel like Ewers' confidence is affected by that. And there's a threat that Manning could come in. He actually came in the Georgia regular season game when Ewers was struggling and maybe dealing with an injury. So I'm a little worried about Ewers and his play, and don't really like the fact that he's there's all these transfer portal rumors about him, about how a Big Ten school is going to offer him $4 million or something. So I don't know how totally focused he is on this season and this playoff game, which is a concern. And on the other side, I feel like Clemson is not a perfect product. Obviously, they have 3 losses. They don't use the transfer portal, so it'll be hard for them maybe to keep up in a game like this. But they still recruit at a pretty high level, especially on the defensive line. They have a quarterback in Cade Klubnik who's making his return to Austin, Texas. He played high school there, won a state title, actually against a Quinn Ewers-led team during the COVID season and in the 2020 Texas high school football season. So I feel like Klubnik could show out well in front of probably a lot of friends and family. And then Dabo Swinney, say what you want about him, but I feel like he's a coach that's going to embrace the underdog role. Clemson's a team that stole a bid. They're not going to be playing with much pressure. They can play loose. And Texas is the team that's facing a lot of pressure with all the expectations and then falling short in the SC championship game a few weeks ago. So I just feel like the unbalanced schedule for Texas this year kind of makes them look better than they are. And I think Clemson is not live to win this game, but definitely can keep this game close, because I am worried about Texas's offensively with Ewers just not sure where his head is at, and also just them struggling when they get into the scoring area.
Listen, you're worried about Texas's offense. I'm worried about Texas's offense. So we're going horns down for my bet again for this one. We're going to go Texas team total under 31 and a half. And for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, Nate, about that Texas offense, I don't trust them. And I think there's an air or a thought of Texas just having this run and gun offense from what they were to start the season is not really how they ended the season offensively. And you look at what they've done completely in their whole season in their advanced analytics, and passing wise, it's not awesome. It's not like end of world deadly. Their drop back success rate on passes, 43rd in the country. That's not amazing, to be quite honest. So to me, their passing game, I think, is getting a lot of hype that it really doesn't deserve. And I think we're going to see a Texas offense that struggles to get over the 30-point mark. Now, Nate, they've only gone over 31 twice this season against Power 4 teams. Once was in the Red River rivalry, and they really only got that over 31 because with 5 minutes left in the game, Oklahoma down 27-3, went for it on fourth down, turned it over on downs inside their own territory. Texas only had to go, I think, like 25 or 30 yards to get a touchdown. Boom, they get the over. So they got that one. And then the second time they went over, they got 49 against Florida, and that was a game that Florida was coming off a game against Georgia the week before, and Texas had a bye week going into that game. So it was right for Texas to dominate. So to me, in a game where both teams coming in, both have had some off weeks to prepare. Clemson's defense is been pretty good. Their defensive success rate is top 35. They're pretty good against the pass. I think, again, with a lot on the line, and you talked about Dabo having the coaching advantage, I think he tries to keep the ball out of Texas's hands and Quinn Ewers' hands as much as possible. He runs the ball a lot, tries to control the time of possession, tries to limit how many times Texas has a chance to score. So to me, I like under 31.5 for their team total. Maybe we see a 28 or a 29 here for Texas, but I don't think this is a shootout. I don't think Clemson wants to get in a shootout, so I think they're going to try very hard to prevent that. Even as underdogs, I think they should be able to, maybe with the running game, success. So give me under 31.5 for their team total. I don't think Texas gets over that 31-point mark.
Yep, I could definitely see the under being just like a good play in this game too. Something I might consider adding before game time. But I'm on Clemson plus the 12, but also I think first half is a way I might consider if I can get plus 7. There's 6.5 out there. I'm hoping that a sports book hangs a 7 by the time this kicks off in about 72 hours.
That would be amazing. All right, Nate, we are going to, what is this, our fourth game of the weekend?
Number 4.
Number 4, we're going to go out back to Big Ten territory. You kind of see a theme here with these Big Ten teams, but we're going to go to Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State laying 7.5 at home. 46.5 is your total. You like a bet in this one?
Yeah, I'm taking Ohio State. On the graphic, it says 7.5. I took 7 minus 115 in the article.
It's fair.
I'm not betting minus 7.5, but 7 I would definitely bet Ohio State. That's a big thing. If you want an extra bet, I would also take the Tennessee team total under 19.5, which is a number that I saw was available before the show. If you want some extra action on that game, or if you want to split that bet up. So like both of those for Saturday night. I guess I'll talk about why I like the team total under bet, and that kind of goes into why I'm laying the points here with Ohio State. But I'm just not fully sold on Tennessee's offense. I know a lot is made about Josh Heupel and how dynamic his offense is. It's kind of like a cheat code, how they run all those spread principles and spread teams out. But they just haven't been very good this year when they've had to step up in competition. And they haven't even played that hard of of competition or tough of competition this year. They played Alabama, they played Georgia, but other than that, they had a very favorable draw in the SEC. They had a brutal loss to Arkansas. They were held by Florida's defense, held by Kentucky's defense, which was a team that was like on the verge of quitting on Mark Stoops. There's just a lot of showings in bigger games this year where Tennessee wasn't good. If you look at the non-conference, including that game against NC State, yeah, it looks good. You put 51 points up, but NC State turned out to be one of the worst teams in the ACC. They beat Oklahoma up in the kind of a statement win early in the year. Oklahoma turned out to be a 6-6 team and it really had nothing on offense. So I think Ohio State, a team that is going to definitely be super motivated, you would hope, off the loss to Michigan.
But yeah, if not, Ryan Day's done.
Yeah, I think that just in general, and now talking about the point spread, what we saw last from Ohio State is why this number is closer to 7, that it is closer to double digits, especially a game at night at the Horseshoe where it's going to be cold weather. So I think there's a opportunity here to buy low potentially on Ohio State at -7, because I do think there are a lot better than Tennessee. I'm not as high on Tennessee. So this is a team I was looking to fade. And I don't mind going to war here with Ohio State. I kind of think about the game 2 years ago when they lost to Michigan at home, but they still made the playoff with C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. And then in the playoff game against Georgia as a pretty big underdog, they probably should have won that game. They missed a field goal at the end. There was a questionable targeting where Harrison Jr. Got concussed and had to leave the game. But they really had a nice bounce back there. And I feel like Ryan Day, coaching for his job, is going to make sure that his offense doesn't do what they did against Michigan, where they just ran the ball up the middle, and they're going to get the ball to their playmakers on the outside against a Tennessee secondary that's vulnerable. So I think the case here for Tennessee would be their defensive line against Ohio State's really injured offensive line. But I do think Ohio State's offense has enough options to work around that and avoid some of the potential issues of running the ball up the middle, which they probably wouldn't be able to do against Tennessee, but also having Howard drop back to pass and hold on to the ball. So I think Ohio State's offense games plans around Tennessee's strength. And I think Tennessee's offense really struggles against an Ohio State defense that's very highly paid, if you believe all the NIL numbers, and very experienced with a great coordinator in Jim Knowles.
Yeah, I'm going to go exactly in the same line of thinking with you, especially with the Tennessee team total under. I'm going to take the full game total under. You can get it. The best line right now, as of this recording, is at Bet Rivers. It's 47, which is the highest number in the market right now. I just like the under in general. And I know, like, if you really like Ohio State, maybe you're thinking maybe they can put 35 on this Tennessee team. There's certainly a possibility at home at night that they can do that. And maybe the first half total that's also kind of tickling me in a good way, 23.5 on the under. I just think this is a competition between two, literally the first ranked defense in terms of defensive success rate in Tennessee. Ohio State has a second ranked defense in terms of defensive success rate. These are two really good defensive teams. Nico Iamaleava, the Tennessee quarterback, was really good to start the year. Kind of slunk back and had to readjust and got a little bit better, but he's thrown 3 picks in his last 2 games. And the interesting stat that I found, Nate, is in the 4 games that he has played against ranked teams, he has only gotten over 200 yards in one of those 4 games. So he does sometimes struggle in games against better teams. And on the road at night with a high-stakes game against the second best ranked defense in college football, he might struggle and throw a couple ill-advised turnovers. And on the other side, Will Howard, I don't really believe in him much. He's had 3 turnovers in his last couple of games. He sometimes struggles with a lot of pressure with a really good defense, which Tennessee does have, especially pass defense. I just see this as a very strong under candidate kind of game. I like the full game 47. I'm debating if I like the first half under 23.5 even more, because maybe both teams just kind of struggle to start this game out, feel each other out, play a little bit more conservative. But I think under is the move. I'll put full game 47 since I really like that number, and I would rather have 24 for the first half, but I don't think you can go wrong at first half or full game total.
Yeah, if you do want to bet the first half under, I would try to bet that now. The total did get bet a little bit today from like 40 to 46.5. There's even as low as 45.5. I think the 46.5 for the full game total is going to go away soon, and then the first half total is going to be like 22.5, and you'd want the 23 in terms of the first half total, just because you could push on 3 or 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals as opposed to lose, which is it's a possible sequence in this game. So yeah, I do agree with that. That was another one I was considering, the first half under, but I prefer the other 2 bets just a little bit, especially at the current numbers.
All right, to close it out,
number 5.
Let's make some predictions. Semifinals, national championship, prediction time. Do you want to start? I can start. Whatever you want, because I'm really bad at these. as you can see, if you read my futures articles, I'm not good at long-term predictions.
Which is totally fine. If you don't want to tie your money up, I wouldn't want to. So I think this is a good exercise to maybe tell people what we're thinking about betting later on in the college football playoff. So yes. In terms of my semifinal, I wrote out my bracket. I have Texas, despite them not covering, hopefully this week against Clemson. I have them beating Arizona State in the Peach Bowl, and then playing Ohio State. I have Ohio State avenging the loss against Oregon in a game that I think is going to be close to a pick'em at the Rose Bowl. And then I have Penn State beating SMU, beating Boise State, getting to the Orange Bowl in the other semifinal. And then I have Georgia, but I say this with not too much confidence. I think Georgia would beat Notre Dame, and if they are an underdog in that game, I would likely have a bet on Georgia. I do think for one game with Gunnar Stockton starting at quarterback that they could kind of rally around him offensively. I don't think the drop-off between Stockton and Beck is too much. I mean, Beck's clearly a better player, but there was just something wrong with Georgia's offense with Beck where maybe Stockton could, not be as much of a drop-off as the market's going to indicate. So I have Georgia against Penn State in the other semifinal. I definitely would love either Big Ten team against Texas in the Cotton Bowl, despite that game being in Dallas, and pretty much a home game for Texas with all the fans from the Dallas area and throughout the state going to be there. But I have Ohio State going to the final to play Georgia, which is another close game against Penn State.
Wow.
And then I have Ohio State beating Georgia as my national championship prediction.
Wow.
So I have the 8 over the 2, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's the 8 over the 6 or the 7 if Notre Dame or Penn State can knock off Georgia, which I definitely do think is possible because I don't know what to expect from Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah, that possible rematch between Ohio State and Oregon is going to be very interesting at the Rose Bowl. West Coast favors Oregon again, but they've already played. Yeah. Oregon's already won. So a team like Ohio State that's got beat by that slim of a margin, you would think they could come back and win that game, make the adjustments from that loss. I'm really high on Oregon this year. I think the way you feel about Georgia, I feel about Oregon, which is like I'm just really high on them no matter the matchup typically that they have. Now, I love to see the number in Ohio State-Oregon type of game, depending on how I bet it. But I have Oregon going to the national championship for myself. I'm not super high on really most teams on the other side of the bracket. I would love to see Indiana beat Notre Dame, but if I'm being realistic, I think Notre Dame wins that game. And if they beat Indiana, I think they can get past Georgia. And if I'm just going off the top of my head, I would have an Oregon Notre Dame national championship. I really am very high on Notre Dame. I really like the way that they play. I think Marcus Freeman coaches them really well. I think that Northern Illinois loss that they had kicked them into some different kind of gear where they just started to dominate and really found themselves. And I think at this point in the season, we're seeing like peak Irish. So if I had to make a choice for national championship matchup, it'd be Oregon Notre Dame for me. But Boise State, I think, is obviously a weak 3 seed in this kind of a field from what we've seen. It would be fun to see Arizona State do something in the Peach Bowl. I'm a big fan of that team, but I think if we're being realistic, money on the line, Oregon and Notre Dame for me, and I'll have Oregon winning that matchup.
I think it's worth noting that there's some sports books of hypothetical quarterfinal numbers. Oregon currently a 1.5 point favorite over Ohio State. And Notre Dame actually a favorite against Georgia in a game that would be the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans on New Year's Day night. Notre Dame -1.5 as well, same spread as the Oregon Ohio State. So we're really looking at and I don't want to push away Tennessee and Indiana, they have a chance to win. But if the chalk prevails this weekend, there's going to be 2 epic quarterfinal games in the afternoon on January 1st and then at night on January 1st. So just something else to look forward to. And I know if any bets pique our interest throughout the playoff, we'll write about them on thegamingjuice.com. And we'll probably have a little bit, maybe more, where we could look not just side and total, but maybe even player props for those semifinals and final games if there's something that we like and those numbers are available in a timely manner.
Yep, you can read all of our bets right there, as Nate said, gamingjuice.com, and all of our other bets for this weekend are scrolling down at the bottom of the screen. But yeah, keep up with us. You can follow us on Twitter as well. Follow us at our handles. Our handles are actually, right underneath our names right there. Nate, I'm sure, will be tweeting out his bets, and of course, we have articles and everything like that. So I'm very excited. It's Christmas time. It's Hanukkah time. It's New Year's time. I mean, this is the best time of the year. We have these amazing bowl games. So I'm very excited, Nate. Before we go, any last words?
No, it's been a fun season, and let's finish strong in terms of the art this weekend, and then the articles we do going forward. It does feel a little weird, especially with everything going on in college football with the transfer portal, where it truly does feel like the season is kind of over because teams are already focusing on next year and putting less emphasis in the bowl games. But I'm hoping that this weekend kind of reminds me that college football and the craziness and maybe some of the things I disagree about with the transfer portal timing can make me forget this and just thoroughly enjoy this playoff over the next month.
Absolutely. We appreciate everyone watching, listening, commenting. Let us know what you think. Let us know your bets. We'd love to hear. You can tweet at us or just comment on YouTube as well. But until then, we'll see everyone when we see you next time.